have a dilemma. How do we get a drawing that's approximately 10.5 inches high? How do we go from here to there? We need something that's 24 inches high. Well, with a computer, of course. What other way to go? The nice thing about this is it's going to take this 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and it's going to enlarge it to the 24-inch size that we want by printing it out on tiled pages. There'll be 9 pages altogether. And when it prints these pages out, it puts a crop mark on it so that you know how to align all the pages. And when we do this, we're going to trim everything to the left of the vertical line on these crop marks. Now here's an example. Here's the crop mark on the first tiled page. And if you look down at the bottom of that page, there's another crop mark. And that tells us where to cut. We're going to cut to the left of the vertical line. Now I'm using my handy dandy little paper cutter. You can use scissors. You can draw a line between the crop marks. If you have an old rotary cutter blade, you can use that. Whatever works for you, but you want this line to be pretty accurate when you're cutting. So now I've cut everything off, and you'll see that the drawing ends right at the edge of the page. That's what we're looking for. Now we're going to take the second page, and by the way, these pages are all numbered so you know what row they go into and what column they go. And there's our crop marks again. We're going to put it in our handy dandy little paper cutter, align it so that our crop marks are right where they're supposed to be. And then we're going to zip off the excess paper. Now we only need to do this on the first 2 sheets. There's actually 3 sheets of paper in each row. You don't need to cut off the extra on the 3rd sheet, and you'll know you're at the end of the row because you'll see that black dot that says, whoop, don't cut here. Now it's time to line these up. And that's why you don't trim off the right-hand side. It gives you something to lay it against. You have your registration marks. You've got your drawing lines. You want to make sure everything's lining up perfectly. And you just keep working with it until it all lines up. Once you get there, and sometimes you have to fudge with it a little bit, you're going to get some tape, and we're going to tape these 2 pages together right along where the pages meet. Be careful when you're taping that you don't accidentally move the papers, because we want this to be pretty precise so it will line up. You're going to tape it all the way up that seam. Try to make sure you also put a piece of tape at the bottom of the page, and you also want to put another piece at the top. That kind of prevents it from accidentally ripping on you when you're handling it. Now we're ready to add the first sheet to the second and third sheets that are already put together. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to line everything up. Make sure the oval is lined up, the branch on the tree is lined up, and the registration mark at the bottom is lined up. And we're going to tape that. So far, so good. Pretty easy. Now you can already see how much bigger it is than the original 10.5-inch high drawing that it started out to be. Now you can see right there when I tried to lift those 3 sheets together, the second and third sheet started to come apart. Make sure you put that piece of tape up at the top. This will prevent ripping later on. Now when you pick it up, nothing's going anywhere. It's secure. We've trimmed all the left off, but now when we lay our pages together, they're not matching. There's a white gap in between. That's because we have to continue to trim. And this time we're going to go with the registration marks and we're going to trim off the top of the next row, just the top. The reason we didn't trim that before is because it takes off your page numbers as well, and you needed those up until this point. It goes pretty quick once you know what you're doing, but take your time. This is the process of getting your design onto your whole cloth. You want to enjoy each part of it. So there's no worrying about rushing through it. If you mess up, you can just print out another page. But I prefer you don't have to do that. If you just cut it right the first time, you'll be fine. Okay, now we've got the tops cut off of the second row of pages, and we're ready to roll again. We're going to do the same thing that we did before. We're going to take what goes in the third column and what goes in the second column and line those up. Make sure everything is matching correctly. And then we're going to tape those together, just like we did for the first row. Okay, now we're going to take the first column paper, lay it on top, line everything up, and you want it to also line up top and bottom plus the design itself, because when we put these together, top and bottoms, that has to line up too. So again, just take your time. Just all a process. Now we're ready to take this set and add it to our first set. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to make sure that everything lines up all the way across before we start taping. Once we've got everything lined up, then you can start to tape again. Again, as you're putting the tape on, you want to keep a hand on the page just to make sure that you don't accidentally twist it a little bit and get it out of whack on yourself, and then you have to try to carefully pull the tape off, and that's just not fun at all. So again, take your time. Now we're ready to do the bottom row, and you have to know when these print out, not only do they have crop marks so you know where to trim them, but they also have page numbers. So you know that certain pages go in a certain row and in a certain column. And there's a chart so that in case you get confused, it's pretty easy to tell just by the drawing. But in case you get confused, I've put a chart of what page goes where in your handout. And if you just follow that. Now we're on this bottom row, and we have to cut the top off along the crop marks just like we did before. And we're almost down to the wire now. Once we get these cut off, lined up, and trimmed against our crop marks, we'll be able to start taping this bottom row. Once we get the bottom row taped together, then we can put it all together into one big piece. So this is the last of the 9 sheets that we have to trim. And we're ready to start putting them together again. So once again, I find it easier to work from right to left when I'm taping these. There's no right or wrong way. You can work it the other way if you prefer. It just seems natural to me because of the way it's being overlapped. Again, you want to make sure everything is lined up and then start taping your pieces together. We get the last piece. This is the last sheet of 9. And we're going to place that on there, lining up the registration mark and lining up the design. And you notice how I keep my hand in place while I'm doing this. I kind of work my fingers down until I get everything lined up. And once I'm there, I keep my fingers holding the 2 sheets of paper together and put the first piece of tape on there. I don't let the pressure up on the paper until I get a little bit more confident that everything's right. But I still hold the papers together until they're all taped. Now we're ready to tape the bottom row to our design. Again, if you've got everything taped together right, the whole design is now going to match up for final taping. Now as I'm doing this, you'll start to see that my pieces of tape are getting smaller and smaller because that's the size of my tape roll is getting smaller and smaller. I almost ran out before I could get this completed. I guess I have to put that on my shopping list. So there you have it. You've gone from a 10.5-inch high design to a 24-inch high design, courtesy of computer automation and tape. And by putting those tapes on the top and bottom edges, again, that keeps your paper more stable as you're working with it. Now I've put this stop sign here to remind everybody at this point to stop. Do not trim any more of your design. We need the rest of it for lining up. The sister to this video tutorial is called Cabin in the Woods. It's exactly the same thing with the substitution of a cabin over the church. I've enjoyed being with you for this tutorial. If you want more information and you need to obtain the pattern, you can do so by joining us at Sit Down Free Motion Quilters. When you join our Facebook group, you will have complete access to the pattern, directions, and materials list for this project. I hope to see you.